My name is Lena Sutter. I'm 36 years old, and my father handed me a $14,700 funeral invoice while my mother's white roses were still fresh beside her urn. He did it in the garden room at Bellwether Funeral Home on April 17th, in front of my daughter, my aunt, my brother, half our old church, and the woman he introduced that afternoon as his fiancée. He slid the paper across the memorial table like he was passing me a dinner menu and said, "Your mother left you nothing but problems, Lena. Don't make this one mine, too." My 8-year-old daughter, Iris, was holding my hand so tightly I could feel her little fingernails through my black glove. I had my mother's old black clasp purse tucked under my arm, the one with the cracked pearl bead on the front, and I remember thinking I should have left it in the car because it still smelled like her peppermint gum. I did not know yet that something's inside that purse would make my father stop smiling. I also did not know that 1 week later, Iris would sit at our kitchen table and count 23 missed calls from the same man who had called me a problem in front of mourners. All I knew in that moment was that my mother was gone, my father was standing beside another woman near the roses, and everyone was waiting to see whether I would pay to keep the room comfortable. I didn't answer right away. That bothered him more than tears would have. My father, Grant Sutter, had always understood noise. He understood slamming cabinet doors, clearing his throat before saying something cruel, sighing so everyone knew he was disappointed. What he did not understand was silence from someone he had already assigned a role. I looked down at the invoice. Bellwether Funeral Home, garden room service, casket spray, preparation, reception linens, transportation, administrative balance due. My name was typed in the box marked responsible party. That was the first thing that made my stomach go cold. Not the amount, not even the timing, my name. I had never signed anything. I had spoken to the funeral home twice. Once to confirm the service time, once to ask whether my mother's navy dress had arrived from the hospice closet. My father had told everyone he was handling the arrangements because it was the last thing a husband can do. Then, in the middle of coffee and sympathy cookies, he decided the last thing a husband could do was hand the bill to his daughter. His fiancée, Tessa, stood slightly behind him in a cream coat with gold buttons. She was maybe 44, pretty in a careful way, with smooth hair and a face that looked practiced at not reacting too quickly. I had met her exactly 12 minutes earlier when Dad tapped a spoon against a water glass and said my mother would want him to be happy. I remember the sound of the spoon. I remember the way my Aunt Marlene looked at the carpet. I remember Iris whispering, "Mom, why is Grandpa smiling?" I squeezed her hand once. Then I straightened my black dress, touched the clasp of my mother's purse, and said, "Check her purse." My father laughed like I had said something foolish. That laugh did not last. Welcome back to By Then I Knew, where the quietest person in the room is often the one who remembers the details everyone else tried to rush past. If you have ever been treated like the backup plan in your own family, or told you were strong, only because people wanted to keep loading weight onto you, stay with me. This is not a story about shouting louder than the people who hurt you. It is about a purse nobody respected, a receipt nobody bothered to find, and the moment grief stopped being useful to someone else. My mother's name was Elaine Sutter, and she carried that black purse for almost 15 years. It was not expensive. The lining had pulled loose in one corner, and the clasp was shaped like 2 small pearls, though one had cracked from when she dropped it in the parking lot outside a pharmacy. She used to tap that clasp with her thumbnail when she was thinking. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. If you heard that rhythm from the kitchen table, it meant she was deciding whether to say something honest or swallow it. Because my father was in the room, most of the time she swallowed it. My mother was not weak. I need to say that plainly. She was tired in ways that made her quiet. There is a difference. She married my father when she was 23, had Nolan 2 years later, had me 4 years after that, and spent most of her adult life making sure Grant Sutter did not feel embarrassed by his own failures. When the electric bill got shut off for one afternoon because he forgot to mail a payment, she called it a mix-up. When he borrowed from her sister and did not pay it back, she said he was under pressure. When Nolan wrecked his truck at 19 after ignoring 3 warning lights, Mom said boys needed room to make mistakes. When I was 16 and used money from my summer job at the grocery store to help cover the repair, Dad clapped me on the shoulder and said, "That's my practical girl. I used to be proud of that." Practical. It sounded better than invisible. By the time I was 12, I knew where my mother kept the insurance cards, the appliance warranties, the school permission slips, the spare checks, and the list of passwords she pretended not to need. I was the child who could sit on hold with the cable company and not cry. I was the child who remembered which cousin had a peanut allergy, which neighbor needed her mail picked up, which bill was due before Dad got paid. Nolan was the child who made everyone laugh. I was the one who knew what laughter cost when the kitchen drawer was full of envelopes with red print. My father used to say, "Lena understands these things. Give it to her." He said it about bills. He said it about paperwork. He said it about my mother's doctor forms. He said it about grief before I even knew that was what he was handing me. After college, I became an accounts receivable reconciliation specialist for a medical supply company outside Columbus. It is a long title for work. Most people only notice when something goes wrong. I match invoices against payment histories. I track refunds. I compare signatures. I find duplicate charges, misapplied credits, wrong account codes, altered responsibility fields. I spend my days looking at boring details until they stop being boring. My family thought this was funny. Nolan called me the invoice queen. One Thanksgiving because I corrected Dad when he said a contractor had overcharged him. Dad said, "You and your little billing job, you always did like making simple things complicated." I did not argue. I had learned early that arguing with my father was like trying to dry rain off a sidewalk while it was still storming. My mother watched me from the sink that day, her hands in yellow dish gloves. She did not defend me out loud. But when Dad went into the living room to complain about football, she came over and slipped a folded $20 bill into my coat pocket. I found it later. There was a sticky note wrapped around it. "For gas, baby." She still called me baby when nobody could hear. That was how my mother loved when she was afraid. Quietly. In folded bills, extra leftovers, small warnings, and things hidden where my father would not look. The last year of her life came slowly, then all at once. Ovarian cancer first appeared in our family as a phrase said too gently in a doctor's office. Then it became appointment cards on the refrigerator, orange pill bottles on the nightstand, loose scarves in the laundry, a plastic chair in the shower, and my mother apologizing every time I drove her somewhere. I lived 20 minutes away in a duplex with Iris, but most weeks I was at Mom's house 4 or 5 days. I learned which anti-nausea medicine worked. I learned how to fold a blanket so it would not press against her port. I learned that hospice nurses speak softly, not because death is peaceful, but because everyone in the room is already listening too hard. My father was there in the way some people are there when being seen matters. He stood near the foot of the bed if visitors came. He told neighbors he was taking it, day by day. He posted a photo of their wedding anniversary on Facebook and wrote, "My fighter." But when the nurse needed someone to clean the humidifier, he suddenly had errands. When Mom got confused at night and called for water, he slept in the den because he said he needed rest to be strong for her. Nolan came twice. The first time, he cried into Mom's blanket for 12 minutes, then asked me if I could spot him $200 because he had missed work. The second time, he brought a gas station boke, took a picture of himself holding her hand, and left before the hospice aide changed the sheets. I do not say that to make myself sound better. I am telling you what the room looked like. There were nights I was not graceful. I snapped at Iris when she spilled cereal because I had slept 3 hours. I cried in the shower with my fist pressed to my mouth. I sat in my car outside my mom's house and counted backward from 100 because I did not want her to see my face twisted up before I walked in. But I showed up. Jules Ramirez, my neighbor, showed up too. Jules lived in the other half of the duplex with 2 loud terriers and a porch full of plants she talked to like coworkers. She was a school cafeteria manager, which meant she could feed 20 people with 12 minutes notice and knew exactly when a child was pretending to be fine. She watched Iris when I had to run to the pharmacy. She put a folded towel by my front door the night Mom's oxygen machine leaked condensation in my trunk. She once texted, "I made too much soup," which was her way of saying she knew I had not eaten. She did not ask me to call her an angel. She just left the porch light on. The month before Mom died, she had one clear afternoon after several bad days. Her voice was thin, but her eyes looked more like hers. I was sitting beside her bed, balancing my laptop on my knees, sorting through supply invoices while she dozed. Dad had gone out for what he called air, though he had put on cologne. Nolan was supposed to visit and had not. Mom opened her eyes and said, "Lena," I closed the laptop. "I'm here. My purse." I looked toward the chair where the black purse sat under her cardigan. "You need something? Take it home when it's time." I swallowed. "Mom, listen to me." Her voice was soft, but there was iron under it. Not much. Enough. "Don't let your father toss it in a box." I picked up the purse and set it on the bed beside her. She touched the cracked pearl clasp with one finger. "He never looks in things that don't belong to him unless he thinks there's money." That startled me because it was sharper than she usually allowed herself to be. "What's in it?" She closed her eyes for a second. "Receipts, lipstick, old lady mysteries." Mom, a tiny smile pulled at her mouth. "Some things are safer where nobody bothers looking." I wanted to ask more. I should have asked more. But pain crossed her face, and the moment folded in on itself. I reached for the medication log, checked the time, and became practical again, because practical was the only way I knew to stay in the room without breaking. That detail stayed with me, not because I understood it, because my mother was not a mysterious woman. If she hid something, it was because the truth needed a quieter place to survive. She died on a Monday morning at 5:42. I know the exact time because the hospice nurse, Renee, said it gently and wrote it on the form while I sat on the edge of the bed holding Mom's hand. Dad was in the kitchen. He had been making coffee for himself. Nolan did not answer his phone. Iris was at Jules's, still asleep on a couch under a blue blanket with tiny moons on it. After the nurse left, Dad stood in the bedroom doorway and looked at the bed like someone had removed furniture without asking him. "Well," he said, "we should call Bellwether. Not we should sit, not she's gone, not thank you for being here." Bellwether looked at him. "Did Mom want Bellwether?" He rubbed his forehead. "She mentioned it. I'll handle it." Those 3 words should have warned me. I'll handle it. In my father's mouth, that usually meant someone else would pay later. The days between death and burial were made of small tasks that felt too ordinary to belong beside loss. I found Mom's navy dress in the closet with tissue still in the sleeves from the dry cleaner. I chose the silver earrings shaped like leaves. I wrote the obituary because Dad said he could not find the words, then changed it because Nolan wanted his name listed before mine. I called the church secretary. I picked photos for the memory table. I washed Mom's favorite mug and then stood at the sink with it in my hand because I did not know where to put it. Dad was oddly busy, not helpful. Busy disappeared for 2 hours on Tuesday, took 3 calls on the porch Wednesday, asked me if I had heard anything about insurance, then pretended he meant the house policy. When I asked whether Bellwether needed anything from me, he waved his hand. "Just be ready Friday. Wear black. Bring the kid if she can behave." Iris was in the hallway when he said that. She did behave. That was the problem. Children in families like ours learn the temperature of rooms before they learn multiplication tables. On Thursday night, I brought Mom's purse home. It sat on my kitchen table while Iris ate toast for dinner, because that was all either of us wanted. The purse looked smaller outside Mom's room. Ordinary. A little worn. I opened it once, but only the main compartment. Tissues, a compact, a lipstick worn flat, a peppermint wrapper, a folded church bulletin from Christmas Eve. I shut it again because touching her things felt like interrupting her. I almost left it at home the next morning. Then Iris came into the kitchen in her black dress and said, "Grandma always had gum," so I put the purse under my arm. Jules drove us to the funeral home because she said nobody should have to park alone at their mother's funeral. She wore a dark green dress and sensible shoes. Halfway there, she glanced at me and said, "You don't have to talk to anyone you don't want to." I gave a dry little laugh. At a funeral? Especially at a funeral. That was Jules. She never turned kindness into homework. Bellwether Funeral Home sat on a corner lot with clipped hedges and a sign that looked older than the building. Inside, everything smelled like lilies, carpet cleaner, and coffee. Harlan Reyes, the funeral director, met us in the foyer. He was a neat man in his 50s with silver hair and the careful posture of someone who spent his career guiding people through rooms they did not want to enter. "Sid Sutter," he said, taking both my hands. "I'm very sorry, thank you." His eyes moved briefly to the purse under my arm, then back to my face. "We have everything ready. Your father arrived earlier." Of course he had. Dad stood near the guest book wearing a dark suit I had not seen before. Nolan stood beside him, scrolling on his phone. Aunt Marlene was arranging sympathy cards, though nobody had asked her to. Then I saw Tessa. I did not know her name yet. She was standing near the white roses at the front of the chapel, smoothing the ribbon on one arrangement like she had a right to touch it. I stopped walking. Jules saw my face. "Who is that? I don't know." Iris leaned into my side. Dad noticed us and came over with a bright, strained expression. "There you are. Don't make that face." I had not said a word. He kissed the air beside my cheek, then looked down at Iris. "You remember how to be respectful today?" Iris nodded, her eyes on the floor. I moved my hand to her shoulder. "She's fine." Dad sighed like I'd corrected him in court. "Lena, this is Tessa Vale." "Tessa, my daughter." Tessa stepped forward. "I'm so sorry about your mom." Her voice was careful, not fake exactly, just uninformed. I looked from her to my father. "How do you know my dad?" The room seemed to hold its breath in a small, private way. Dad gave a laugh. "Not today, that was all. Not today." As if I had chosen the timing. The service itself passed in pieces. Pastor Glenn read from a psalm. Nolan cried loudly during the second song, then checked his reflection in the dark window. Aunt Marlene dabbed her eyes with a tissue she kept folded in a perfect square. Dad sat in the front row with Tessa one seat behind him and to the side, close enough that people would notice, far enough that he could pretend they were being discreet. I sat with Iris and Jules, the purse rested in my lap. I kept my thumb on the cracked pearl clasp through most of the service. Tap, tap, pause. Tap, tap, pause. I caught myself doing it and almost smiled because it was such a mom thing, and then grief rose so fast I had to lower my head. When Pastor Glenn invited people to share memories, 2 neighbors spoke. One woman from church told a story about Mom bringing blankets to a winter coat drive. Harlan adjusted the microphone. Dad stood. I expected him to talk about their marriage. He talked about hardship. "Elaine fought bravely," he said, one hand on the podium. "Those of you who know me know I've had a difficult road. Caregiving takes a toll. Loss takes a toll. But Elaine would not want us stuck in sorrow. She believed in moving forward." I stared at my knees, then he turned slightly. "And I have been blessed to have someone help me remember that life continues." Tessa looked down. A few people shifted in their chairs. Jules's hand found the back of mine for 1 second, then let go. Dad did not introduce Tessa as his fiancée during the service. He saved that for the reception. That was my father's instinct. He knew exactly when people would have coffee in their hands and fewer exits. The garden room was set up with round tables, white cloths, coffee urns, trays of small sandwiches, and a memory table at the front. Mom's framed photo stood beside the guest book. White roses filled 2 tall vases. Someone from Bellwether had placed a microphone near the table for anyone who wanted to share informal memories. I did not want food, but I made Iris a small plate because children still need grapes on the worst day of your life. Jules took one look at my tights and crouched slightly. "You've got to run." I looked down. A thin black line had opened from my knee to my ankle. "It's fine." "No, it isn't. Come with me." She walked me to the restroom, pulled a new pair of black tights from her bag, and handed them over without making me ask. "Why do you have these?" "I work in a cafeteria. I have fixed every possible emergency before 9 in the morning." I almost laughed. It came out like a breath. When we returned, Dad was at the microphone. Tessa stood beside him now, not behind him, beside him. "I want to thank everyone for honoring Elaine," he said. "She was a complicated woman, but she loved her family." Complicated. My mother had become complicated now that she could not correct him. Dad continued. "And I want to say something because life is short, and Elaine knew that better than anyone. In the months before she passed, I reconnected with someone who has been a source of comfort and strength. Tessa and I are engaged. The room went still in that polite Midwestern way where people do not gasp, because they think silence is less rude. Iris looked up at me with grapes in her hand. Aunt Marlene closed her eyes. Nolan stared at his shoes. Tessa smiled, but her smile trembled at the edges. That was the first time I wondered what version of the story she had been given. Dad lifted his glass of water. "To moving forward," he said. 3 people raised their cups because they panicked. Then he turned toward me. "Lena," he said, warm and public, "can you come here a minute?" There are moments when your body understands, before your mind catches up. My shoulders tightened, the purse strap slid down my arm. Iris said, "Mom, it's okay," I told her. It was not okay. I walked to the memorial table, each step slow enough that people could pretend nothing strange was happening. Dad reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a folded document. "I hate to do this," he said. That phrase is almost always a lie. He unfolded the invoice and placed it flat on the table beside my mother's photo. "I know you're grieving, we all are. But Bellwether needs this settled today, and since you handled your mother's paperwork, it makes sense." I looked at the invoice, at my name, at the amount, at the due line, $14,700. "I didn't arrange this," I said. He lowered his voice, but not enough. "Don't make this ugly." Across the room, Harlan Reyes turned his head. I saw him notice the paper. Aunt Marlene took one step forward. "Grant not here. For 1 second," I thought, finally. Then she looked at me and said, "Lena is good with paperwork. Maybe just take it home and sort it out." There it was. The almost. The little door opening, then closing from the inside. I looked at my aunt, and something in me settled. Not hardened. Settled. Waiting for her to become brave had been another chore I had assigned myself. Dad tapped the invoice. "Your mother left you nothing but problems, Lena. Don't make this one mine, too." A woman near the coffee urn looked down at her cup. Tessa's face changed. Iris left Jules and came to my side. She tucked herself against my hip and stared at the invoice like it might bite. Dad smiled at her. "This is grown-up business, honey." I put my hand on Iris's hair. "No," I said quietly. "This is family business. You made sure of that." Nolan appeared near Dad's shoulder. "Lena, just don't start. It's one day, I repeated. He looked annoyed, like I was doing something unfair by remembering words correctly. Dad pushed a pen toward me. It was black with Bellwether Funeral Home printed in silver along the side. "I'm not signing that." His smile thinned. "Nobody said sign. Just acknowledge responsibility, so they can work with you." That was when I knew he had practiced the sentence. Not pay. Acknowledge. Not debt. Responsibility. Not trap. Paperwork. I spent my life reading words biz chosen to make liability sound harmless. I looked again at the invoice. There was a service date, a due date, an account number, my name, my address, my phone number. Under account notes, the line was blank, but the spacing looked off, like something had been removed from the version printed for me. "Who gave them my information?" I asked. Dad rolled his eyes. "You're her daughter." That wasn't my question. The room became quieter. Harlan Reyes walked toward us. "Mr. Sutter, perhaps we should discuss any billing questions in my office." Dad turned, relieved at first, probably thinking Harlan had come to rescue him. "Perfect. Tell her. Tell Lena the account needs a responsible person." Harlan's expression did not move much, but his eyes flicked to the paper. "We can review the account privately," he said. Dad laughed. "No, she's making it public. So let's be clear publicly. I had made nothing public." He had stood beside my mother's roses and turned her funeral bill into a test of obedience. But I still did not raise my voice. I picked up the invoice. The paper trembled slightly in my hand. I hated that. I hated that my body was telling the room what I refused to give them with my mouth. I scanned the top again. Account number, service package, balance due, responsible party. Then I saw a smaller number beneath the account number, printed beside the words linked plan. My thumb stopped. It was not labeled clearly, just a string of letters and digits, BW4471E. Something about it pulled at me. I had seen the beginning of that number before, not on a funeral bill, in my mother's purse. I did not know how I knew until Iris tugged my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, "Grandma's purse is stuck." She had picked it up from the chair where I had set it down. The side zipper, the one I had never used, had caught on the lining. A folded corner of paper poked out. I took the purse from her and turned away slightly. Dad said, "Lena." I did not answer. I worked the zipper gently because it was old, and I could hear my mother in my head telling me not to yank things just because I was upset. The lining pulled loose, then gave. Inside the narrow pocket were 3 things: a movie ticket stub from years ago, a small silver prayer card, and a folded receipt so soft at the creases it felt like cloth. I opened it halfway. Bellwether Funeral Home. My throat tightened. I did not read the whole thing. Not then. I saw only enough. Elaine Sutter. Payment. Final installment received. Plan number BW4471E. The same number. I folded it again and closed my hand around it. I could feel my pulse in my fingers. Dad's voice sharpened. "What are you doing?" I looked at him. For the first time that day, I understood that his confidence was not confidence. It was timing. He had counted on me being too sad, too embarrassed, too trained, too surrounded, too alone. "Check her purse," I said. He gave a short laugh. "What?" I placed the receipt stub on the table, still folded. "My mother told me not to let you toss it in a box." Something crossed his face so fast, most people would have missed it. I did not. My job is details. Nolan saw it too. That was when he looked at Dad instead of me. Aunt Marlene whispered, "Grant?" Dad recovered. "For God's sake." She kept every scrap of paper she ever touched. "That doesn't mean anything." I didn't say it did. "Then stop acting like you found buried treasure in a dead woman's handbag." The room flinched. Not all at once, not dramatically. Just a small shared movement, like a cold draft had passed under the door. Tessa stared at him. "Grant." He looked irritated that she had spoken. I turned to Harlan. "Can you tell me what linked plan means on this invoice?" Harlan's jaw tightened. "I would need to review the file." "Please do." Dad stepped closer. "No, you don't get to turn your mother's funeral into one of your little office audits." I looked at him, then at the invoice. "You put my name on a bill in a room full of people. I put responsibility where it belongs. And I'm asked what the document says." His face reddened. "The document says you owe for your mother's funeral." "No," I said. "It says my name." "That's not the same thing." A few people looked up at that. Words matter when money changes hands. They matter even more when someone is trying to hide behind them. Dad leaned toward me. "You always do this. You pick at details so you don't have to face the truth. Your mother spent every dime being sick. There was no plan. There was no money. There was just me cleaning up after her. And you pretending you're the only competent person in the family." That was the sentence that opened the door. Not all the way. Enough. From the back of the room, a chair leg scraped softly against the carpet. I did not turn yet. Harlan said, "Mr. Sutter." "No," Dad snapped. "Read it. Since my daughter wants a performance, read whatever you need to read. Tell her there was no prepaid anything. Tell her this balance is real." Harlan looked at me. I looked down at the folded receipt under my fingers. My mother's handwriting was on the back. I could see the faint blue ink through the paper. "Lena, if needed." Only that. If needed. I unfolded the receipt and slid it toward Harlan. "Can you compare the plan number on this receipt with the linked plan number on the invoice?" He did not touch it right away. That hesitation mattered. Dad mistook it for support. "See," he said. "This is ridiculous." Harlan picked up the receipt. His eyes moved once across it, then again. His face went still in a way that made the room even quieter. "The plan number is DO441E, he said. I handed him the invoice. He looked at the top. "The linked plan number on this invoice is also BW4471E. I heard Tessa inhale. Nolan muttered, "Dad." Dad waved a hand. "Old receipt. Payment. Deposit." She never understood money. That was another mistake. My mother had understood money. She had understood it so well that she hid proof in the one object he considered useless. I turned to Harlan. "Does the receipt show final installment received?" He looked uncomfortable now. Not because of me. Because the document had become a person standing in the room. "Yes," he said. "It appears to." Dad's voice rose. "Appears to, exactly. It appears to. You don't know without the file." "I can pull the file," Harlan said. "Then pull it," Dad said. "End this." He believed the file would save him. That belief told me there was more than the receipt. From row 5, a woman stood. She was small, maybe in her early 70s, wearing a gray coat buttoned all the way to her throat. I had noticed her during the service only because she sat alone and did not look around for approval when she cried. Her hair was white and pinned back. She held a sealed envelope in both hands. "Mr. Reyes," she said. Her voice was not loud. It carried anyway. Harlan turned. The woman walked slowly toward the memorial table. People moved their chairs to let her pass. She did not look at my father. She looked at me. "You must be Lena." I nodded. "My name is Harriet Bell." The name meant nothing to me, but it meant something to Harlan. His eyebrows lifted. "My husband's family owned this funeral home before it sold to the Reyes Group," she said. "I worked accounts here for 31 years, Dad scoffed. "Who is this?" Harriet did not answer him. She held out the envelope to Harlan. "Elaine asked me to bring this today if a bill appeared." My mother's name in her mouth nearly undid me. I gripped the edge of the table. Dad said, "That's absurd. Elaine didn't know you." Harriet finally looked at him. "Yes, she did. 3 words. No drama. Just a door closing." Tessa looked from Harriet to Dad. "Grant?" He shook his head. "I don't know what this woman wants." Harriet's hand remained steady. "I want to keep a promise." Harlan took the envelope. The front had my mother's handwriting on it. "To be opened only if Grant says there is a balance." My knees loosened. Jules stepped closer behind me. She did not touch me, but I knew she was there. Dad reached for the envelope. "That is private family property." Harlan pulled it back. "Mr. Sutter, you requested public clarification." "I requested clarification from you, not from some old employee with a grudge." Harriet's face did not change. That was when I saw my father clearly. Not as a grieving widower, not as the man whose moods had shaped my childhood, just a person who got meaner when facts entered the room. Harlan looked at me. "Sutter." I did not know exactly what he was asking permission for. Maybe to open it, maybe to continue, maybe to let the room hear what my father had invited into it. I nodded. He broke the seal carefully. Inside were several sheets of paper, not many, enough. The first was a copy of the same receipt, clearer than mine, with the full plan summary attached. The second was a ledger printout. The third was a form with my father's name on it. Harlan read silently first. His mouth tightened. "Well," nobody moved. Harlan lifted the first page. "This is a prepaid funeral arrangement for Elaine Margaret Sutter, paid in full as of February 12th of this year." A sound moved through the room. Not a gasp. A murmur that died quickly because people wanted to hear the rest. Tessa turned fully toward Dad now. I stared at the date, February 12th. My mother had been alive, weak but alive. That was the week I had taken her to the bank, because she said she needed cashier's checks for old business. I had waited in the car with the heater running. She came out tired but satisfied, carrying her black purse against her chest. I had not asked enough questions. Harlan continued. The plan covered the chapel service, standard preparation, transportation within county limits, reception room, floral credit, and administrative fees. He looked at the invoice again. The current invoice appears to duplicate covered items. Dad's face had gone dark red. "Appears." You keep saying appears. Harlan lifted the third page. "This is a refund request." Grant stopped moving. The whole room felt it. Harlan read more slowly now, each word placed where nobody could pretend it had not landed. Request submitted by surviving spouse, Grant Thomas Sutter, dated April 15th. Refund requested for prepaid arrangement balance. Reason listed. Family choosing alternate payment method. My father's mouth opened, then closed. I looked at the invoice date, April 15th, 2 days before the funeral, 3 days after my mother died. Harlan glanced at the lower part of the form. Signature line appears to bear Mr. Sutter's signature. Dad snapped, "Don't read my personal information out loud." Tessa said very softly, "You told me she never planned anything." He turned on her. "This is not your concern." That was the wrong thing to say to a woman he had introduced beside my mother's roses 10 minutes earlier. Tessa took 1 step away from him. Harlan was still reading. There is an internal note attached. Surviving spouse requested billing responsibility be transferred to adult daughter, Lena Sutter, pending refund post-processing. I felt the words before I understood my own reaction. Not rage, not victory. A tiredness so deep it felt older than me. He had tried to cash out my mother's care for herself and hand me the visible shame. My father said, "That is not what that means." I looked at him. "Then what does it mean?" He jabbed a finger at the papers. "It means I was trying to simplify things." "For whom?" "You don't understand what it's like to lose a wife." I looked at my mother's photo. No, I said. But I understand what it looks like when a payment is reversed and a balance is assigned to someone who never signed. Harlan lowered the pages. Dad turned to the room, searching for the version of himself people used to accept. This is a misunderstanding. Elaine was confused. Lena is emotional. We can fix this privately. Aunt Marlene stepped forward again, pale now. Grant, maybe we should. He rounded on her. Stay out of it. She stepped back. Another almost. Another failure. Nolan whispered, Dad, stop. Dad ignored him. Lena, give me the papers. No, I am your father. I know. That answer seemed to hit him harder than if I had denied it. Harriet stood beside Harlan with her hands folded. I turned to her because there was one thing I still did not understand. How did you know my mother? Harriet's eyes softened. Chemo waiting room, she said. My sister was being treated on Tuesdays. Your mother was Thursdays sometimes, but schedules got mixed. We talked. She asked what I used to do. I told her I had worked funeral accounts for most of my life. A small smile touched her mouth and disappeared. She said, Then you're the first person I've met who won't act strange if I ask a practical question. That sounded like Mom. I pressed my lip together. Harriet continued. She wanted to make sure this day was not left for you to manage. She said you had managed enough. I looked down. The room blurred for a second. Jules put one hand between my shoulder blades, not rubbing, just there. Harriet said, She gave me Copspies because she was afraid the originals would disappear. She said if nobody asked you for money, I should say nothing and let you grieve. I swallowed. Dad laughed once. It was ugly. Elaine was paranoid at the end. Harriet looked at him for a long moment. No, she said. She was specific. That line moved through me like a hand closing around mine. My mother had been specific. She had seen him. She had seen me. Harlan gathered the pages into a neat stack. Sutter, based on these documents, you should not sign the invoice. Bellwether will place the account under review immediately. Any charge assigned to you in connection with this transfer will be reversed, pending investigation. My father lunged toward the table. You can't just reverse it. Harlan's voice cooled. We can correct an account. You don't know the full situation. I know enough not to collect from a party who did not sign and appears to have been assigned after a refund request by someone else. There it was. Not revenge. Procedure. Procedure is not flashy. It does not raise its voice. But when it is written down correctly, it can stand longer than a lie. Tessa slowly removed the ring from her left hand. It was not a dramatic gesture. She did not throw it. She did not slap him. She turned it once, pulled it over her knuckle, and held it in her palm. Dad saw her. Tessa. She looked at the roses, then at the refund request in Harlan's hand. Did you ask me to stand beside flowers you tried to cash out? No one breathed. Dad's face twisted. That is not fair. She nodded once, like his answer had clarified something. Then she set the ring on the memorial table, not near my mother's photo, but beside his water glass. I'm going to call my sister, she said. Tessa, wait. She did not. I watched her walk out of the garden room in her cream coat, gold buttons catching the light. I did not know her well enough to pity her deeply, but I felt something close. She had been brought into a room as proof that my father deserved happiness. Instead, she became another witness. Nolan tried next. Lena, he said low, can we do this here? I turned to him. Did you know? His mouth tightened. Know what? I took out my phone. Not because I had planned this exact moment, but because earlier that day, while Dad was at the microphone, Nolan had texted me by mistake. Or maybe he meant to text Dad and tapped my name because grief makes careless people worse. The text said, she won't say no in front of people. Just keep it simple. I had seen it 10 minutes before Dad called me up. I had not answered. Now I held the screen where only Nolan could see it. His face drained. That wasn't don't, I said. One word. He stopped. Dad saw the phone. What is that? Nothing you need from me. That was the first boundary I ever said to him that felt like a locked door instead of a wish. Harlan stepped away to speak with another staff member. Harriet asked if I wanted to sit. I shook my head because I was afraid if I sat down, I would not get back up. Iris leaned against me. Mom, she whispered. Did Grandma pay already? I looked down at her. Yes, baby. Then why did Grandpa say she was expensive? There are questions children ask. Because no one has taught them to protect adults from plain language. Dad heard her. His face changed again, but not into shame. Into anger at being seen by someone too young to manage his image for him. I put my hand over Iris's ear gently, not to hide the truth, but to spare her his response. He was wrong, I said. Aunt Marlene began to cry. Not loudly, just enough to make herself part of the hurt without having to repair it. Lena, she said, we all need to calm down. I looked at her. I am calm. She flinched. That was the thing about my calm. They had praised it for years when it made their lives easier. They hated it the second it protected me. Dad tried to recover the room. He reached for my arm. Jules moved before I did. Don't touch her, she said. No shouting, no threat. Just a cafeteria manager in sensible shoes placing herself between my father and my sleeve. Dad stared at her. Who are you? Jules smiled without warmth. Someone who knows her daughter's name. I could have cried then. Not at the documents, not at the reversal, at that. Because all day my family had spoken around Iris as if she were a prop in my grief. Jules remembered she was a child. Harlan returned. Mrs. Sutter, I've removed your contact information from the active billing field. We'll send you confirmation in writing. Mr. Sutter, I will need to speak with you separately. Dad pointed at me. This is what she does. She turns people against family. Harriet said, no, you handed her the bill. Again, simple. Again, enough. People began moving then, quietly. Some toward the hallway, some toward me, with faces full of things they did not know how to say. Mrs. Nolan from church touched my elbow and whispered, your mother was proud of you. I nodded because I could not manage more. Pastor Glenn stood near the coffee urn, looking deeply uncomfortable, which was fair, because nobody trains pastors for refund fraud beside a memorial table. Dad kept talking. He said I misunderstood. He said grief made me suspicious. He said Elaine had wanted him to be comfortable. He said he had sacrificed too. He said $14,700 was not some fortune. He said I was embarrassing my mother. That one made me look at him. My mother hid proof from you, I said. I don't think I'm the embarrassment she was worried about. The words came out quieter than I expected. He stared at me like he had never met the woman speaking. Maybe he hadn't. For most of my life, he had met only the version of me who stayed useful. Harlan asked Dad to follow him to the office. Dad refused at first, then realized the room was no longer his. That was the visible shift, not the papers. Not even Tessa leaving. It was the way people stopped arranging their faces around his comfort. He walked out with Harlan, still muttering. Nolan followed him after one last look at me that seemed to ask whether I would save him from choosing a side. I did not. Aunt Marlene hovered. Lena, I didn't know. I believed that. I also believed she had known enough. You heard him, I said. She pressed a tissue under her nose. He's grieving. So am I. Her mouth opened, then closed. It was the first time I had ever said those 3 words to someone in my family without immediately making room for their grief, too. Harriet placed a hand on the envelope, now lying empty on the table. Your mother wanted you to have the originals, she said. I only had copies. She said the purse had what she could keep close. I touched the cracked pearl clasp. I almost left it at home. Harriet smiled faintly. She said you might. She also said your little girl would probably ask for gum. A laugh broke out of me, so suddenly I covered my mouth. It did not sound happy. It sounded alive. I looked at Iris. Did Grandma tell everybody your secrets? Iris looked very serious. I do like gum. Jules handed me a napkin because the tissues were across the room and she was practical like that. Harriet reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small packet of peppermint gum. She asked me to bring this too, she said. That undid me more than the receipt, I cried then. Not pretty, not dramatically. Just enough that Iris wrapped both arms around my waist, and Jules stood beside us, blocking the room from feeling entitled to it. For a few minutes, nobody asked me to sign anything. Nobody asked me to be reasonable. Nobody asked me to understand my father. We left Bellwether after Harlan gave me a printed confirmation that the charge to me was frozen and under review. He apologized 3 times. I told him the apology belonged partly to him and partly to a system that lets a loud man sound official when a quiet woman asks for proof. He accepted that without defending himself. Outside, the late afternoon had turned cold. The sky was flat and gray. Iris held the peppermint gum. Jules carried the purse because my hands were full of papers. Harriet walked with us to the parking lot. "I'm sorry we met this way," she said. "I'm glad we met." She nodded. Then she looked at Iris. "Your grandmother talked about you. She said you draw cats with very serious eyebrows." Iris's eyes widened. "I do. I hope you keep doing that." Then Harriet hugged me, not tightly, just enough. Before she left, she said, "Your mother was scared, but she was not confused. Remember that when people try to soften what happened." I did remember, because they tried. By evening, my phone was full. Nolan called 6 times. Aunt Marlene left 3 voicemails, each one starting with, "I'm not defending him," then defending him in smaller words. 2 cousins texted, asking what had happened, though they had been in the room. My father did not call that night. That surprised me at first. Then I realized he was not sorry yet. He was calculating. I put Iris to bed in my room, because neither of us wanted to sleep separately. She asked if Grandma was mad at Grandpa. I lay beside her in the dark and looked at the ceiling. "I don't know, baby. Are you?" "Yes." "The zones, are we still gonna see him?" I turned my head toward her. Her small face was barely visible in the hall light. "Not for a while." She nodded like a child accepting weather. Then she said, "Grandma paid so you wouldn't have to be sad about money." My throat closed. "Yes," I whispered. "I think she did." The next morning, Harlan emailed a 0 balance notice for my account and a formal statement that I had no signed financial responsibility for the service. He wrote that the matter had been reassigned for internal review. Attached were copies of the documents Harriet had brought, with my mother's plan summary and Dad's refund request. I opened the refund form 3 times, not because I needed to see it, because part of me could not believe he had signed his name. Grant Thomas Sutter. His handwriting was big, impatient, tilted to the right. I had seen it on birthday cards he did not choose. Permission slips he signed late. Checks my mother filled out for him. There it was below us, a sentence requesting release of prepaid funds. Family choosing alternate payment method. That phrase sat in my chest. Family. He had meant me. My father's idea of family was a room where someone else reached for the bill. On Monday, Tessa called. I almost did not answer because I had no room left for another person's shock. But something about her leaving the ring on that table stayed with me. "Lena," she said, "it's Tessa Vale. I'm sorry to bother you." "You're not." She was quiet for a moment. "I didn't know. I believe you." She exhaled shakily. "He told me your mother refused to plan anything. He said he was drowning in expenses, and you were distant." I looked across my kitchen at the black purse sitting on the counter. I was there almost every day. I know that now. She did not ask me to comfort her. That mattered. She said, "I ended it. I just wanted you to know I won't repeat his version." "Thank you. He told me you were cold," she said. "You weren't cold. You were standing still while he kept moving the floor." After we hung up, I sat for a long time with the phone in my hand. I did not like Tessa exactly. I did not know her, but I respected the clean line she drew once she saw the truth. Some people need less evidence than family. On Tuesday, Nolan came to my workplace. He did not get past reception because our front desk manager, Monica, has the smile of a kindergarten teacher and the instincts of a courthouse guard. She called my extension and said, "There's a man here claiming he's your brother. He seems sweaty in a personal way." I almost laughed. "Tell him I'm unavailable. He says it's urgent." I'm still unavailable. A minute later, my phone buzzed. "Nolan, you're really going to cut me off over one text?" I stared at that, one text. Not the plan, not the silence. Not watching Dad hand me a funeral bill beside Mom's flowers. One text. I typed back, "You helped him corner me at Mom's funeral. Do not come to my job again." Then I blocked him. My hands shook afterward. I want to be honest about that. Boundaries sound clean after the fact. But the first time you place one where obedience used to be, your body may think you are doing something dangerous. Mine did. I sat at my desk, opened a spreadsheet, and matched payment lines until my breathing slowed. On Wednesday, Aunt Marlene mailed a card. No return address, though I knew her handwriting. Inside was a sympathy card with a watercolor dove on the front, and a note that said, "Your mother would want peace." I turned the card over in my hands. Peace. In our family, peace usually meant finding the person bleeding and asking them not to stain the carpet. I did not respond. On Thursday, Harlan called again. His voice was formal. Mrs. Sutter, I wanted to update you. The refund request was not completed before the discrepancy was identified. The prepaid funds remain applied to your mother's account. However, because Mr. Sutter initiated a refund request and represented an alternate payer, the outstanding administrative reversal and investigation fees have been assigned to him. I stood in the hallway at work, one hand pressed to the wall. Is he being billed? Yes. How much? I can't disclose his full account details to you, but I can say you have no balance with Bellwether. That was enough. He paused. You may receive contact from him. I already assumed that. I'm sorry. This time, I said, thank you for correcting it. After I hung up, I went back to my desk and opened the oldest email in my inbox, because sometimes work is a place to put your hands when your life has too many sharp edges. Friday was 1 week after the funeral. The day began normally enough. Iris had cereal. Jules knocked at 7:15 because Iris had left her purple backpack in Jules's car the night before. I was wearing jeans and an old gray sweater because I had taken the day off to deal with Mom's closet. The black purse sat on the small shelf by the front door, beside my keys. I had placed the zero balance notice inside it, not hidden, kept. There is a difference. At 8:03, my phone rang. Dad. I watched it until it stopped. At 8:05, he called again. At 8:07, again. By 9:30, there were 12 missed calls. By noon, 18. By 2, 23. Iris came home from school early because of a teacher workday and saw the red number on my screen. Is that Grandpa? Yes. She counted carefully with her finger. 23. I know. That's a lot. It is. Are you calling him back? No. She thought about that, then opened her backpack and took out a drawing of a cat with very serious eyebrows. This is for Grandma's purse, she said, so I put it in the purse. At 4:40, someone knocked on my door. Not a polite knock, a familiar one. 3 hard hits, a pause, then 2 more. The knock of a man who believed doors were delays, not boundaries. Jules was on my porch returning a library book Iris had left at her place. She looked at the driveway, then at me through the screen door. You want me to stay? I looked past her. My father stood at the bottom of the steps in the same dark coat he had worn to the funeral. He looked older than he had 1 week before, not humbled, cornered. I'm okay, I said. Jules did not leave. She stepped to the side and leaned against the porch railing with the library book in her hand. Dad looked at her. This is private. I opened the inside door but kept the screen door locked. It stopped being private when you handed me a bill at Mom's funeral. His mouth tightened. Are you going to let me in? No, he blinked. Such a small word, such an unfamiliar shape between us. He lowered his voice. Lena, sweetheart. I almost did not recognize the word from him. Sweetheart was for when he needed something. Bellwether is threatening collections, he said. There are fees now. They're saying I misrepresented the account. I said nothing. He shifted his weight. This has gotten out of hand. Still nothing. You need to call them. No, you work with billing. You know how to talk to these people. There it was. The skill he mocked returned as a bucket for his fire. I'm not calling them. His eyes hardened. After everything I've done for you. I looked at him through the screen. What did you do for me last Friday? He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried another door. Your mother wouldn't want this. I touched the purse on the shelf beside me. You don't get to use her for this. His face twisted. She was my wife, and she was my mother. She would want us to be a family. I thought of her handwriting on the envelope, to be opened only if Grant says there is a balance. No, Dad, she left me proof so I wouldn't have to. I said it quietly. He stared at me. For once, he did not have a sentence ready. The porch was still. Jules looked down at the library book, giving me the dignity of not making my moment a performance. A car passed slowly on the street. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice. Dad's voice changed. Smaller now, but not softer in a way I trusted. I made a mistake. I waited. He looked at the ground. I was under pressure. There was the apologies costume, but not the apology. What mistake? I asked. His eyes flicked up. What mistake did you make? He swallowed. The paperwork got confused. No, Lena. What mistake did you make? His jaw worked. He could not say it. He could ask me to rescue him. He could stand on my porch and call me sweetheart. He could use my mother's memory like a crowbar. But he could not say, I tried to take the money your mother set aside, and make you pay for her funeral in front of everyone. So I did not help him. I did not explain the account. I did not call Harlan. I did not call collections. I did not soften the story for relatives. I did not open the screen door. Finally, he said, "You're really going to abandon your father?" I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "I'm going to stop paying to be your daughter." That was one of the few times in my life a sentence felt finished the moment I said it. He stepped back like I had pushed him. "You'll regret this." I nodded once. "Drive safely." Then I closed the door. My hand stayed on the knob until I heard his car start. When I turned around, Iris was standing in the hallway. I had not known she was there. "How much did you hear?" I asked. "Enough." I've crouched. "Are you okay?" She nodded. Grandma was smart. I smiled then. "A real one, small and tired." "Yes," I said. She was. Jules tapped lightly on the doorframe. "I'm making grilled cheese. For whoever wants to pretend dinner is balanced." Iris raised her hand. I looked at the purse on the shelf. For years, that purse had been my mother's quiet container. Tissues, gum, lipstick, folded receipts, private courage. At the funeral, it became proof. On my shelf, it became something else. Not a shrine. Not a wound I had to keep touching. A place for what we were keeping on purpose. I put Iris's cat drawing inside with the zero balance notice and the peppermint gum Harriet had given us. A few weeks later, Bellwether sent a final confirmation. My mother's account was paid in full, no balance owed by me, no action required. I read those words twice, then placed the letter in the purse. Nolan tried emailing from a new address. I deleted it. Aunt Marlene left one voicemail saying, "Family shouldn't end over money." I did not call back. Our family had not ended over money. It had ended over what they believed money gave them permission to do. Tessa sent one text in May. It said, "I hope you and Iris are well. I kept your mother's program." It reminded me not to ignore the first lie. I answered, "We're okay. Thank you for leaving when you understood." Harriet and I had coffee once. She brought photocopies of everything in a neat folder and told me more about Mom in the chemo waiting room. How Mom had asked whether prepaid funeral plans were really honored. How she had worried Dad would call her morbid. How she had said, "My daughter knows numbers, but I don't want her having to fight on the day she loses me." I cried in that coffee shop. Harriet let me. She did not pat my hand too soon. She did not tell me to forgive anybody. She just slid a napkin across the table and said, "Elaine chose well. I wanted my mother back. No document fixed that. No reversal. No public silence, no blocked number, no final notice from Bellwether made the house less empty where she should have been." There were still mornings I reached for my phone to call her, and remembered halfway through unlocking it. There were still nights when Iris asked a question. Only Grandma would have answered with the right mix of nonsense and wisdom, but grief without my father's invoice attached to it felt different. It felt like mine. That summer, Iris and I planted white flowers in 2 pots on our porch. Not roses. I was not ready for roses. We planted white petunias because Jules said they were hard to kill and forgiving if you forgot to water them for a day. Iris painted a small sign that said Grandma Elaine's porch flowers and drew another serious eyebrow cat in the corner. The black purse stayed on the shelf by the door. Sometimes I carried it to appointments when I needed to feel braver than I was. Sometimes Iris opened it to smell the peppermint gum. Sometimes I thought about donating it, then didn't. Not because I was stuck, because some objects earn their place. My father never came to my door again. I heard through a cousin that collections became uglier before it became quiet. I heard he blamed Harlan, then Harriet, then Tessa, then me. I heard he said he had been ambushed. Maybe he believed that. Some people call it an ambush when the truth arrives before they finish performing. I did not correct the cousin. I did not ask for details. I did not build a second life around tracking his consequences. The room had heard enough. The documents had said enough. My door had closed enough. On the first anniversary of Mom's death, Iris and I went to Bellwether, not inside, just to the garden behind it where families sometimes sat after services. Harriet met us there with a small paper bag of peppermints. Jules came too, carrying coffee for the adults and hot chocolate for Iris. We sat on a bench in the sun, no speeches, no microphone, no invoice. Iris placed one white petunia on the bench between us and said, "For Grandma." I touched the clasp of the purse in my lap. Tap, tap, pause. For once, I did not feel like I was copying my mother's fear. I felt like I was carrying her proof into a quieter life. That's my story. A cracked pearl purse, a $14,700 invoice, and a little girl's drawing tucked beside a zero-balance letter. If someone in your life only values you when you are useful, take this as your sign to look closely at what they hand you, what they hide, and what you are allowed to stop carrying. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment with where you're listening from, and subscribe to By Then I Knew for more stories where quiet truth finally gets the last word. Script based on the provided concept and instructions.